Hi, I'm Jim Worgan. I am chairman of the Friends of Chatterley Whitfield. I'd like to welcome you to the site, which is a scheduled ancient monument. It contains a range of buildings dating from 1883 through to the 1960s, and it is my pleasure this morning to be able to show you some of the iconic buildings on site. The building you see behind me is unique in the coal mining industry in Great Britain. It's to a German design, and if you look you will see that the brick winding engine house is connected to the headgear, which is where the wheels were on which the cages went up and down the shaft. It's called the Windstanley shaft after one of the directors of Chatterley Whitfield colliery and was sunk in 1913-1914 by a group of German workers. We are told, although there is no proof, that the company refused to pay for the work because of the First World War, and the German workers were interned. Now, if we'd like to go this way, I can show you the 1895 powerhouse, which is totally derelict, but it's worth having a look at. The coming of steam power radically changed the fortunes of collieries in Great Britain, because it enabled them to have power for winding engines, compressors, compressed air, electricity generation, and to provide heat and water for the pithead baths, which came late in life. Behind me is the remains of the Whitfield boiler plant, and there are 12 Lancashire boilers. There is the largest bank of Lancashire boilers left anywhere in Great Britain, and these fueled not only Whitfield, but they also fueled the Industrial Revolution of this country, along with the Cornish boiler. The chimney, it used to be 10-15 metres taller, but the problem with a chimney is when it's taken out of use, it starts to deteriorate. And Fred Dibner came along, I think it was in the 70s or 80s, and he took the top 30 feet or 10 or 15 yards. And there is actually a cap on the top to prevent the ingress of water. I'm now walking up to the Institute shaft, which again is one of the original shafts from the 1850s. But what you will notice this time is that it has got a brand new brick engine house. Originally it had a stone engine house and contained a steam winding engine. This was converted in later years to an electric engine, and the electric engine is still in situ, as is the one in the Windstanley shaft. The shaft was seriously damaged in an explosion involving the Laura shaft in 1881. Leaving the Institute shaft, I'm now walking towards the Platte shaft, which was sunk in 1881. But I think at this stage it's important to tell why it was necessary for the shaft to be sunk. In 1874, on land at the back of the Husker, the company sunk the Laura shaft. It was only small and was not very deep. But in 1881, in winter, there was a massive explosion underground involving a fire in a blacksmith's hearth, which resulted in the death of 24 men and boys. Contemporary reports suggest that between 5 and 7 men were recovered. What we do know was that the Dale brothers were recovered in January 1921, 40 years after the accident, and they are buried in Smallthorne churchyard. So it means that between 17 and 19 bodies still lie below the surface. So in actual fact, it's a graveyard. Now you'll notice that both the Platte and Institute shaft are ironclad from floor to the top, and the significance of that is what I will describe in a few minutes relating to the main mine fan. I'm walking past the main colliery fan, which is on my left, which is a relatively new installation and is all electric. Originally, colliery fans were steam driven, but with the advent of electricity, it became much more efficient. The Institute and Platte shafts have iron structures from floor to the top, and they are what is known as the upcast shafts. So the fan sucks air out of the pit and goes down the Husker and Windstanley, which are open shafts, and is drawn up the Institute and the Platte. And I think this fan drew 384,000 cubic feet a minute through the workings. So if you wanted to go into the Institute or the Platte, you had to go through a set of airlock doors, otherwise you would destroy the ventilation. And at the bottom of the upcast shafts, there were also sets of airlock doors, which again, if those airlock doors were left open, it would breach the ventilation. The building you see behind me is the Platte Winding Engine House, which has a date of 1883. It is the oldest building on site and originally contained a steam winding engine. It is part of the historic fabric of the site and is a very important structure because the buildings on site date from that one of 1883 right through until the 1960s. Around about the time of the First World War, the need arose for a new shaft to cater for the increased output. And the one you see behind me is the Husker shaft, which was sunk in 1915 and came into operation in 1918. It became the main coal drawing shaft for the colliery. The shaft was much deeper than all the other shafts. It went down to 640 yards, but as all the seams were dipping westward, it was connected to every other shaft underground. From the time the cage was belled off at the top to the time it got to the bottom was 56 seconds. And it is an amazing piece of machinery which still exists on site. The building you see behind is the Pithead Baths, which was constructed in 1938. It was brought into use under the Miners' Welfare Scheme, and for the privilege of using the Pithead Baths, the men paid the princely sum of 6 old pence a week, 2.5 pence in today's money, and they had to provide their own soap and towel. When the National Coal Board was created in 1947, the Pithead Baths became free and they no longer had to pay to use them.